Her son forged her signature on a business loan she didn't know existed. Eleanor McBride didn't scream, didn't cry. She filed paperwork. By sundown, he was erased from her will, power of attorney, and every shared account he'd once drained in silence. She'd spent decades building a legacy he assumed was his by blood. Now she was building a future, without him. And when the lawyers came knocking, they found the locks changed, and the receipts waiting. Wait, before we go any further, I gotta ask, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. The applause had just started to fade when the banquet server slid a warm plate of filet mignon in front of me, steam curling up like it had something important to say. It smelled like rosemary, garlic, and effort, the kind people reserve for milestones. "Ladies and gentlemen," the superintendent said, raising his glass, "tonight we celebrate Eleanor McBride, 39 years in public education, 22 of them right here at Ridge Valley." Polite clapping, a few cheers. Someone whistled. I smiled. The kind you practice, not for the moment, but for the memory you hope it becomes. At the far end of the long head table, a chair scraped. Kyle and Mindy were arriving. Finally. Her heels tapped the hardwood like applause in reverse. He nodded at a few people, muttered a rushed, "sorry," and kissed the top of my head like I was furniture. "No worries," I whispered. "You made it." Mindy's perfume was sharp, citrus, and dismissal. She pulled out her phone before she sat down. Kyle took the seat next to mine, already scanning the printed menu like he wasn't sure why we were here. The superintendent gestured to the podium. "And now, a few words from Eleanor's son, Kyle McBride." I turned, surprised. "You're speaking?" He shrugged. "Guess so." He rose, buttoned his jacket, one I recognized from a Nordstrom sale I'd paid for 2 Christmases ago, and walked to the mic. "Well," he started, smiling too wide, "I'd like to thank everyone for coming tonight. My mom worked hard, you all know that." A few nods. I mean, growing up, she never missed a game, or a practice, or a parent-teacher night. She practically ran our life like a school district, scheduled, efficient, and way too generous with extra credit. A light laugh. "And now she's retiring, which I guess means she'll have plenty of time to do whatever retired people do. Read, knit, get into weird Facebook groups about puzzles or whatever." More laughter. Kyle smirked, lifted his glass. "We'll definitely visit her. If there's time." The room chuckled, but it was the kind that trails off too quickly. Someone cleared their throat. I smiled. Because that's what mothers do. Especially in rooms where the truth isn't polite. He sat back down like he'd delivered wisdom, not wound. Mindy nudged his elbow, laughing into her champagne. I focused on the steak. Warm. Pink at the center. I remembered making that boy grilled cheese every night the year his father died. I remembered refinancing the house so he could go to Duke without debt. I remembered the check I wrote, quietly, without asking for fanfare, for the down payment on his first home. I remembered. After dessert, Kyle handed me a gift bag. "From us," he said, casual. Inside was a navy blue box wrapped in gold tissue. I opened it and pulled out a framed clock, silver, modern, engraved. "Time is precious. Love, Kyle, and Mindy." The hands ticked audibly. "Do you like it?" Mindy asked. I looked at them both. "It's thoughtful." She smiled, already glancing at her phone. Kyle checked his watch. I held the clock in my lap while the superintendent posed us for a group photo. Flashbulbs, platitudes, paperweight goodbyes. The party ended around 9. They left before the coffee came. Kyle gave me a quick hug. "We'll talk soon, Mom." I nodded. "If there's time." They didn't hear me. They were already walking out. I stayed behind and watched the room clear. Empty plates, half-drunk wine. Someone's name tag left on a seat. The clock ticked in its box, steady and smug. I smiled, accepted the clock, and knew what I was about to cut. The chair across from me was still pushed back from the night before, empty, like it had waited for someone who never stayed. I hadn't slept much, just enough to know that I wasn't tired from the party. I was tired from the role I'd been playing in my own life. The retirement bouquet sat in the center of the table, wilting slightly. Yellow roses and eucalyptus. One of the carnations had lost a petal. I cradled my coffee with both hands, the ceramic warm but not comforting, and opened the crisp printout I'd brought home, the speech I'd written for Kyle. He never asked for it. Never glanced at the folder I'd left beside his dinner plate at the banquet. Still, I had written every line with care. My son was my reason to become strong. He was the why behind every late-night email, every policy fight, every year I stayed when I could have left. Tonight I stepped back from service, but not from love. I folded the paper neatly, not out of ceremony, but so I didn't have to see what he chose to ignore. The phone buzzed. One text. Kyle. Sorry if my joke didn't land. We'll try to swing by in August. Swing by, like I was a gas station on the way to something better. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened Instagram, an old habit I never found joy in. Only updates. Mindy had posted 20 minutes ago, sunset over the vineyard, time to reconnect. Napa bound, wandrajat, or deserved. The photo was a perfectly filtered shot of 2 champagne flutes clinking on a first-class tray table. So much for August. I set the phone down gently. Not slammed, just set. In the silence, the clock on the wall ticked once. Then again. I stood, walked over to the small secretary desk tucked into the living room corner, and opened my laptop. I logged into the credit union portal, the same one I used to help Kyle apply for his first car loan when he was 19. Recurring transfers, monthly family support recipient, Kyle McBride amount, $800. Memo, emergency buffer. I stared at the transaction. It had been running for 4 years, quietly, automatically, like a ghost paycheck for being my son. He never asked if it was hard for me. He just thanked me when I reminded him it was there. I hovered over the cancel transfer button. Then I clicked it. The confirmation pinged. A soft digital chime. Transfer terminated. I closed the laptop, leaned back in the chair, and let the silence spread. It didn't hurt the way I expected. If anything, it felt clean. Like a table finally wiped clear after guests stopped showing up. 2 hours later, the house phone rang. The one only 2 people still used, the dentist's office, and Kyle. The display flashed his name. I didn't let it go to voicemail. I picked up. Mom? His voice was already tight, like he'd run through 3 possible tones before landing on confused. Hey, I just got a weird notification from the bank. Did your account have some kind of glitch? No glitch, I said calmly. Just clarity. Silence. Wait, what do you mean? I stopped the transfer, Kyle. There was a pause, like he expected a punchline. But, is everything okay? Are you okay? I stirred my tea with the back of a spoon, listening to the clink against porcelain. I'm never better. I mean, if you needed something, I did, I said. And now I'm giving it to myself. He didn't answer. The line stayed live, but empty. I waited a few more seconds. Then I hung up. The silence after I hung up didn't feel triumphant. It felt clean, like the moment right after a thunderstorm, when everything smells like wet earth and something unspoken. But peace, I've learned, has a short shelf life. The phone rang again 20 minutes later. Same name, same number. I let it buzz to voicemail. Then the email came. Subject, quick check-in from Mindy McBride. Body, Eleanor, I hope you're okay. We just saw the transfer stop, and honestly, this is a really bad time to pull back support. We're trying to refinance the house and finalize pre-approval. Can we schedule a quick call this week? No, how are you? No, thank you for the last 4 years. Just financial panic disguised as etiquette. I read it twice, then clicked archive. They never noticed the money until it stopped. I stood and stretched. The ache in my lower back reminded me how long I'd been sitting. I walked to the sunroom, the one Kyle helped paint 15 years ago before disappearing halfway through to take a call about a ski trip. The sun had shifted to the west, cutting across the hardwood floor in clean gold lines. I reached behind the bookshelf, pulled out the old cherrywood box where I kept my original estate documents. The ones Kyle thought I'd never change. The hinges squeaked in protest. Inside, manila folders, yellowing paper, a metal paperclip rusted at the edge. It smelled like old envelopes and decisions I'd delayed too long. One folder was labeled in my own handwriting, Will and Living Estate, 2016. I opened it slowly, careful with the pages like they could break. Kyle was listed as primary beneficiary, healthcare proxy, durable power of attorney, all the roles that gave him quiet power without requiring loud responsibility. At the back was a note I'd written to myself in blue pen, "Leave everything simple. You raised him right." I stared at the words until the ink blurred, because I had raised him right, but I'd also raised him busy, enabled, entitled, maybe. I reached for a red pen from the drawer beside me, and I began to cross out every favor, every line that put him before anyone else, every space where my life was treated like a contingency plan. I drew thick, calm lines through his name, not out of rage, out of clarity. The house was quiet, except for the distant hum of traffic from the main road and the steady tick of the clock Kyle gave me, the one now tucked inside a box in the hall closet, its battery removed. By the time the folder was marked and folded closed, I felt taller, not younger, just upright. I pressed my palms to the table, steadying myself. The house didn't feel lonely. It felt mine. The receptionist at Morton & Fields offered me cucumber water in a glass so thin I could see my fingerprints through it. I declined. I didn't come for refreshment. I came to rewrite history. Legally. "I'll need a few signatures," said Caroline Morton, the firm's senior estate planner. She wore no jewelry beyond her wedding band, and her nails were short, clean. Nothing about her wasted time. We sat in her office with its paneled walls and quiet air. I could hear the clock ticking behind me, not the one from Kyle, but the one in Caroline's bookshelf. Firm, measured, real. "I assume," she said, "you'd like to revise your prior documents entirely?" I nodded. "Everywhere his name appears." She didn't flinch. "We'll start with the basics: beneficiary removal, healthcare proxy reassignment, and POA update." She turned her laptop toward me. The screen reflected her efficiency back at me, clean columns of assets, line items, authorizations. "And who will take over power of attorney and medical decision-making?" "Amanda Caldwell," I said. "My goddaughter." Caroline typed, paused, and glanced up. "Are you sure she's ready for that responsibility?" I smiled. "She's already been doing it, without being asked." Flashback. 3 years earlier. The hospital lights had hummed all night. I was curled on my side after surgery, stomach still sore from anesthesia, when the curtain parted and Amanda stepped in with a thermos of homemade squash soup. "I used real cream," she whispered, pulling a chair close. "Don't let them bully you into low-sodium bland." She spoon-fed me slowly between nurse visits. Kyle hadn't come. He'd sent a DoorDash coupon. It didn't work. Back in the present, I handed Caroline a slip of paper with Amanda's full legal information. "We've already discussed it," she's agreed. Caroline made a few adjustments. "Once we finalize this, if your son contests any changes post-mortem, we'll want thorough documentation of your intent." I raised an eyebrow. "What kind of documentation?" "Journal entries, correspondence logs, missed contact attempts, any proof that these decisions reflect an ongoing reasoned change, not sudden retaliation." "Retaliation?" I repeated, smiling dryly. "I'm not retaliating, I'm catching up." She handed me a bound leather folio. "Start here." The leather was soft, the pages thick, a journal for grief, not mine but his. That night I opened to the first page and began writing. July 2nd, Kyle did not attend my retirement dinner on time. He made a joke during his speech that reduced our relationship to an afterthought. No call the morning after, no apology. July 3rd, canceled $800 monthly transfer. Immediate call from Kyle, followed by a transactional email from Mindy regarding refinancing. July 4th, no contact, no visit. Mindy posted Napa photos. By the end of the week, the pages had begun to fill, not with bitterness, but with quiet accounting. Ignored voicemails, skipped birthdays, a loan to cover their fence rebuild, a check for their honeymoon they never mentioned again. I opened the bottom drawer of my old file cabinet and found the envelope I'd been avoiding for years. It was thick, creased at the corners, and sealed with a fading sticker of a golden retriever. Kyle had put it there when he was 12, across the top in my handwriting, Kyle's Loans. Inside, folded in thirds and paper-clipped in stacks, were the receipts, mortgage transfer forms, a note promising $5,000 within the year, bank printouts of deposits I never mentioned out loud. Some were signed, others just scrawled in Kyle's all-caps handwriting, "Will repay soon. Thanks, Mom." I pulled them out, laid them across the desk, and let the paper speak the truth he no longer remembered. There are some things a mother never forgets. The sound of her child's first cry, the way they say "mama" before they can pronounce it, and the exact moment they make her feel disposable. Kyle wore a tailored navy suit to my retirement dinner, subtle pinstripes, crisp white collar. He looked the part of a grateful son. He even winked at me as he took the mic. What he didn't know was that I paid for that suit. Neiman Marcus, Black Friday. I'd sent the money with a card that said, "For your promotion interviews, you've earned it." Turns out, I was funding his exit strategy. I spread every financial document across my dining room table, a mosaic of wires, receipts, scribbled IOUs, and the kind of gratitude that can be cashed but never returned. 12 years of just until we catch up. It began with $300 for car repairs, then $800 for a dental emergency, mortgage help when they almost lost the house, twice. I created a spreadsheet, a private one. Line by line, I entered each transaction. Date, writing desk, the same one where I used to help Kyle with spelling tests, and opened my updated will documents. In the margin next to the estate distribution clause, I wrote in a new line, "Any beneficiary who commits or attempts fraud, identity misuse, or financial deception shall be fully disinherited." I signed the addendum, dated it, and scanned it into my encrypted archive. The law wasn't always fair, but it could be thorough. The next morning, as I stirred honey into my coffee, an alert buzzed on my phone. Alert, new login attempt, Capital Bank savings account IP address, unknown, location, Alexandria, Virginia. My fingers curled around the mug. It wasn't just past due, he was still reaching in. The doorbell rang at 6:38 p.m., 23 minutes later than he said he'd arrive. I'd already lit the candles, the good ones I save for birthdays and holidays, and the casserole was resting beneath foil on the stovetop, still hot but fading. The smell of roasted garlic and thyme hung in the air like a promise I should have known better than to make. Kyle stood on the porch holding a bouquet from the grocery store. The red clearance sticker was still on the plastic wrap, half torn. "Hey, Mom," he said, breathless like he'd sprinted through traffic to make it seem like this mattered. I stepped aside and let him in. The scent of lilies hit me first, strong, pungent, not quite right for spring. "These are for you." I took the bouquet and smiled, tight-lipped. "I'll find a vase." He followed me into the kitchen, glancing around like he hadn't been here in months, which was true. The last time he stepped foot inside, it was Easter 3 years ago. He'd stayed 15 minutes. "I brought wine too," he added. "Thought we could start fresh." He handed me a bottle of Chardonnay with a metallic screw top. I nodded. "Fresh start," I echoed. "So, what brought this on?" He leaned against the counter like we were co-workers at a happy hour. "Just been thinking a lot, you know? About family, about time. Everything feels more important lately." I set the flowers in water and opened the oven, checking on the sourdough rolls. He cleared his throat. "Have you updated your will lately?" I paused, hand on the oven door. Slowly turned. He rushed to add, "I know you've been making a lot of changes, just wondering where things stand, legally, for peace of mind." I pulled the tray from the oven and set it down. Peace of mind for whom? He laughed, too loud, too fast. "You know, just good to be clear." I set the table with cloth napkins and the blue-rimmed plates he used to eat off when he was 5. He didn't notice. We sat down. I ladled out the chicken casserole, my mother's recipe, the one Kyle used to ask for after every soccer game. He picked at his food, checked his phone twice, and tried to compliment the furniture he'd once called dated. I poured wine into our glasses, clinked his without waiting for a toast, and took a sip. Halfway through dinner, his phone buzzed again. This time, he answered. Yeah? Uh-huh. No, just finishing up. Can I call you back? Pause. Then a quick, yeah, I'll be there. He looked at me, sheepish. Sorry, Mom. Something came up. Work-related. Can we do this again soon? I set my fork down. Of course, if there's time. He didn't catch it. Or maybe he did, and chose not to respond. He kissed my cheek, cool and mechanical, and left without taking the wine. The front door clicked shut. The scent of garlic and disappointment thickened. I stood in the quiet dining room for a long time, staring at 2 plates, one nearly untouched, the other picked at like an afterthought. Then I walked into the kitchen and scraped the casserole into the trash. Every roll, every spoonful, gone. I rinsed the plates, turned off the stove light, and blew out the candles. My phone buzzed in the other room, a message from Amanda. Amanda, want to meet my lawyer friend tomorrow? The office smelled like lemon oil and restraint, polished hardwood floors, wall-length bookcases filled with case law and framed degrees, no nonsense, no sentimentality. Which was fitting. This wasn't a will signing. This was a boundary being notarized. I'll walk you through the structure, said Marcy Lewis, Amanda's lawyer friend. Mid-40s, soft southern drawl, sharpened by a Columbia law degree. We'll start with the living trust. It protects your assets while you're alive and distributes them without probate once you're gone. I nodded. That's the goal. I want it airtight. Then we name a trustee, she said. Executor, the person who ensures every wish is honored to the letter. I didn't hesitate. Amanda Caldwell. Amanda, who sat beside me, didn't flinch, just smiled in that steady way she did when things got serious. She's your... Marcy asked gently. My goddaughter, I said. My chosen family. Flashback. Age 48, recovering from pneumonia. I had been in bed for days. Kyle had called once, texted twice. Amanda came, over every day after work, brought soup, cleaned the guest bathroom, sat beside me and rubbed Vicks into my chest like I was her own mother. Every birthday since her 10th, she'd shown up with a card, hand-drawn for the first 12 years, then crisp ones folded around poems or bookstore gift cards. She had always seen me, not for what I gave, but for who I was when no one was asking anything of me. Back in the present, Marcy flipped to a new page. We'll list out the assets now. Home? Fully owned, I said. Deed is clear. I've already moved it into the trust. Savings and retirement? I slid over the documentation. Consolidated and ready. Stocks? Vanguard Index. All logged. Marcy whistled softly. You're more organized than most of my 30-year-olds. I worked in public education for 39 years, I said. I know what happens when people leave messes. She passed me a page marked Personal Letter of Intent. This is optional, she explained, but it can clarify the spirit behind your decisions. Sometimes that's what makes the legal stand emotional ground too. I took the pen, wrote slowly, deliberately. Legacy is earned, not assumed. I signed my name beneath it, my real one, not the version Kyle had forged. And then I pulled a small velvet-lined box from my purse. Marcy looked curious. Amanda looked concerned. I'd like to leave one thing to Kyle, I said. Just one. Inside the box was the framed clock he gave me at my retirement dinner, the one that clicked too loud and meant too little. I'd taken the battery out that morning. I didn't want it ticking anymore. I wrapped it in soft linen and sealed it in a plain cardboard box. On top, I placed a note. Time is precious. So is respect. One without the other means nothing. Amanda didn't say a word. She just rested her hand on mine and nodded once. Marcy sealed the final page. You're all set, she said. You've taken every precaution. I exhaled. It felt like handing back a weight I'd been holding for years. Except this time no one could drop it. When I got home, I placed the box on the top shelf of the hallway closet, labeled it, for Kyle, no forwarding address required. The woman at the insurance office wore oversized glasses and a neutral smile. She didn't ask questions, didn't blink at the change, just handed me the form and said, "Sign where it says primary beneficiary." I pressed the pen to the line, steady and without hesitation. Amanda Caldwell, not Kyle, not next of kin, not the person who once called from Cabo to say happy birthday 5 hours late, with wind and margaritas loud in the background. Amanda, the only one who had never needed reminding. That afternoon, I sent scanned copies of the updated estate summary to both my lawyer and my primary care physician. Subject line, "Final directive confirmation. Please file." I didn't add explanations, just facts. Clean, quiet facts, the kind that hold up under pressure, even when families don't. By Thursday, the calls started. First it was Aunt Nora, then one of Kyle's cousins. "He's confused, Eleanor," Nora said gently. "Worried. Rumors are flying around that you're changing everything, that you've cut him out completely." I didn't correct her. He wasn't cut out. He had walked away, and then looked back only when the trail of breadcrumbs stopped appearing in his account. That evening, just before sunset, my cell phone lit up with a number I hadn't saved, but didn't need to. Kyle. I debated ignoring it, but something in me wanted to hear his voice, if only to remember why I stopped waiting for it. I picked up. "Hi, Mom." His voice was lighter than I expected. Faux casual, like he was easing into a conversation he'd rehearsed. "Word's gotten around," he said after a beat. "The estate stuff. Amanda." I said nothing. Let him fill the silence. He cleared his throat. "Are you punishing me for one offhand comment?" The question floated between us, entitled, rehearsed, deeply unaware. "No," I said calmly. "I'm rewarding the people who showed up." Another pause. "I mean, come on," he continued. "It was a joke. At your dinner. You know I didn't mean it." I stood by the window watching a squirrel dig in the garden bed I'd just mulched. "It wasn't offhand, Kyle," I said. "It was a summary of who you are when I'm not useful to you." He scoffed, a short, sharp exhale. "So what, you're just rewriting the whole family history?" "I'm not rewriting anything," I said. "I'm correcting the credits." For a moment there was only static, the kind of static that comes when people realize their name isn't inked in as deeply as they thought. "Is this really what you want, Mom?" he asked. "To divide the family?" "No," I said, "but you already did. I'm just honoring the terms." He hung up without saying goodbye. I stood there for a full minute after, the phone still in my hand, the screen gone dark. Then it buzzed again. Voicemail, Mindy McBride. I stared at the notification, thumb hovering, breath. Held assistant Mindy hadn't spoken to me directly in over a year. Her last message had been a forwarded joke about millennial parents and air fryers, but this would be something else. I pressed play. Her voice came through like steam under pressure, low, sharp, and trembling with resentment. Mindy's voice filled the living room like air freshener sprayed over rot, sweet, choking, and impossible to ignore. "Hi, Eleanor. I'm not sure what's going on lately, but we're a little surprised. We thought you were smarter than this." Pause. "I mean, Amanda? Really? I'm sure she means well, but this all feels a bit reactive. A lot of emotion, not a lot of legacy planning." Another pause. Longer. Tighter. "Kyle's trying so hard. You know he has a lot on his plate right now, and with everything that's happened, well, this just feels like a punishment for one comment he didn't mean. If you could reconsider some of the changes, we'd love to sit down and have a conversation. Soon, before things get irreversible." Click. The silence afterward was so still, I could hear the faint creak of the hallway floor. Settling like it, too, had something to say. I pressed play again, then a third time. Each listen peeled back another layer of politeness, until all that was left was panic wrapped in artificial grace. I forwarded the voicemail to my attorney with a single line, "Please archive. Tone may be useful later." Then I sat at my kitchen table and opened the laptop Amanda had helped me buy last year. It booted up with a soft hum, the screen reflecting a woman who no longer needed permission to protect herself. I clicked the webcam app, positioned the screen, and pressed record. October 12th, I said clearly. This is Eleanor McBride. I'm recording this for Amanda and for my legal counsel as a testament to the decisions I've made regarding my estate. I took a breath. For the record, I am of sound mind and full memory, and I remember everything. I spoke for 26 minutes, about birthday parties missed, about checks written and promises broken, about casserole thrown away and flowers with the sticker still on. I spoke about love that turned into obligation, and obligation that calcified into silence. I didn't cry. I didn't curse. I ended with, I gave my son more than money. I gave him chances, and now I'm giving him distance. I clicked save. Then I backed it up 3 ways: cloud, USB, and a physical disk Amanda would keep in her fireproof safe. It was almost midnight when I turned off the lights and headed upstairs. But the next morning brought a new kind of storm. I was still in my robe when my landline rang. The only person who used it now was Alan Connors, an old friend from my school board days, and currently a senior loan officer at Capital Heritage Bank. "Ellie," he said, his voice lower than usual, "I just wanted to give you a heads up, unofficially. Someone tried to initiate a reverse mortgage on your property last week." I sat down. Hard. "What?" "Online application. It triggered some internal flags. The income profile didn't match, and your birth date had a 1-digit error, but the address was yours. So was the name. It was listed under joint authority with a co-agent, Kyle McBride." A numbness spread across my chest, not shock, but the kind of slow boil that precedes clarity. "Thank you, Alan," I said. "Can you send me the application file?" "Already on its way," he replied. I hate to be the one bringing this to you. I know how hard you worked for that house." I ended the call. This wasn't just arrogance anymore. This was theft dressed up as entitlement. By that afternoon, I was back in Marcy's office, pen in hand. We filed 2 documents: legal bar on Kyle McBride from acting as my financial agent or representative in any context. A fraud report with supporting documentation from Alan's bank. "I want it airtight," I said again. Marcy nodded. "It's done." When I got home, I walked into my study, deleted Kyle from my emergency contact list, and removed his access to every shared account, document, and password reset. He was officially locked out, but I knew better than to think it was over. The final thing I ever heard Kyle say to me was a click, not an apology, not a breath of reconsideration, just the sound of disconnection. So I returned the gesture. I opened my contacts list, scrolled to his name, once saved with a little star beside it, from when I believed he was the most important person in my life, and tapped block caller. Then I did the same to Mindy. My phone was quieter after that. Not peaceful, just stripped. The kind of quiet that comes after someone stops knocking, but you still listen for it. It didn't take long for the phone to ring again, this time from other voices. Margaret called, then Aunt Nora, then a former co-worker who now ran the PTA newsletter. "Ellie," they said, "what's going on with Kyle? We heard you're making changes. Big ones." I stirred cream into my coffee slowly, the spoon clinking like punctuation. "He chose to distance," I said. "I honored the request." Some tried to probe, others were less subtle. "But he's your son. Don't you think maybe it's just a phase? Everyone says things they don't mean." I smiled into the phone like I was staring across a table I'd cleared. "Exactly. Everyone says things. I'm finally listening." That weekend, I wrote something. Not just for myself, but for the ones circling me like I was a scandal, not a survivor. I titled it, "Boundary Inheritance: What We Leave When Love is Conditional." It was short, clear, honest. I wrote about how inheritance isn't a transaction of blood but of character, about how love doesn't make abuse more palatable, just more confusing. I submitted it to the local newsletter that goes out with the Sunday paper and knew, even before it hit print, that it would ripple. Not like a bomb, more like a recalibration. Amanda saw it first. She texted, "You just broke the silence with a scalpel." Then she called. "Dinner's on me tonight," she said. "We're celebrating the trust. And your spine." We went to a quiet place off Jefferson Avenue. Cloth napkins, candlelight, a lemon risotto that tasted like someone had whispered to the rice all afternoon. Amanda raised her glass. To women who rewrite the rules. I clinked mine against hers. And to women who enforce them. She grinned. You sure you're not secretly a lawyer? I laughed, but it faded quickly. You know, I said, looking out the window where headlights slid past like brief lives, I always thought I'd be a grandmother by now, the kind that bakes too much, reads the same bedtime story 50 times, sends silly cards. Amanda reached across the table and touched my hand. You still can be, she said gently. Just, maybe not the way you imagined. I nodded. I knew she was right. Still, I mourned the blueprint I'd carried for so long, the one where my son turned around, the one where the dinner wasn't cold, the one where the clock ticked for both of us. When I got home, the porch light was still on. My house smelled like lavender cleaner and cooling hardwood. I poured myself a cup of tea and turned on the lamp in the reading room. That's when I saw it. A thick envelope tucked under the doorframe. The corner of a blue sticker peeking out. Certified mail. Sender, Wallace and York, LPPRE, Kyle McBride. I didn't open it. Not yet. I just stared at it, the way you stare at a closed door someone once walked out of. The letter from Wallace and York wasn't thick, just 3 sheets of firm, expensive paper, the kind that tried to make threats look dignified. It opened with civility, as legal threats always do. Dear Ms. McBride, our client has concerns regarding recent estate decisions made under potentially diminished mental capacity. I read it twice. Then again, slower, letting each line land like a cold hand on the shoulder. It wasn't about loss, or regret, or reconciliation. It was about access. Kyle didn't want forgiveness. He wanted entry. Back into the vault he believed bore his name. I folded the letter neatly, placed it into a new folder labeled Contest Attempt, Kyle, and picked up the phone. Marcy, I said, when my attorney answered. He's trying to frame this as incapacity, wants to pry the door back open. I could hear the scratch of her pen over the line. We'll shut it, she said, permanently. 2 days later, I sat in Dr. Elias Patel's quiet, bright office with pale green walls and the scent of pine polish hanging in the air. Why are we here today? He asked, gently but clearly. To prove I'm not crazy, I said, though my son's behavior might suggest otherwise. Dr. Patel chuckled. Fair enough. The testing was long. Word recall, pattern recognition, abstract reasoning. A clock I had to draw, hands placed just right. He watched me closely, not suspiciously, just as someone trained to notice if the lights behind the eyes had dimmed. They hadn't. When it was done, he placed his clipboard aside. You're sharp, he said, sharper than some 40-year-olds I see. Good, I said, rising. Let's make that official. By Friday, Marcy had bundled the medical assessment, copies of my revocable trust, and a sworn affidavit from Amanda outlining my clarity during every major change. We sent it via certified mail and email to Wallace and York with the subject line, Re McBride Estate, Response to Pre-Contest Threat. It closed with Marcy's final paragraph, which I helped write. Ms. McBride retains full legal and mental competency. Any further attempts to challenge her decisions without substantial evidence will be met with formal counteraction for harassment and undue interference. It felt less like paperwork and more like boarding up a house that had been broken into too many times. I exhaled after pressing send. Not relief, exactly. Something deeper. Resolution. That night I sat at my writing desk and opened a clean envelope. Cream paper, no heading, just ink and truth. To whomever reads this after I'm gone, this is the why. I wrote for pages, not about money, about presence, about being there at every parent-teacher night, every fever, every time Kyle's voice cracked from fear or failure. I wrote about the slow erosion of gratitude, how being needed became being expected, how the people who once clung to your hip eventually roll their eyes at your existence. I wrote, love is not currency, and neither is time, but when both are spent without care, they run out just the same. I sealed the letter, tucked it into my estate binder behind the trust summary, and labeled it in Amanda's handwriting, "Only open if contested." The morning after, I was pulling weeds in the back garden when Amanda called. I answered on the second ring, dirt still under my fingernails. "Ellie," she said, breath sharp, "don't panic." "But he's here." My heart didn't stop. It slowed. "Where?" "Your driveway, sitting on the bumper of his car like he's waiting for something." I wiped my palms on my jeans, straightened up, and looked toward the front of the house. Nothing yet. But I could feel it. The weight of history pulling itself into the present, uninvited. I opened the door. Kyle stood slowly, hands in his jacket pockets, eyes dull from exhaustion or ego. I couldn't tell which. "Can I come in?" he asked. "Just to talk, off the record." I studied him for a long moment, then stepped aside. "Amanda stays. Otherwise, you stay outside." He hesitated, then nodded. "Okay." The house smelled like cinnamon and Windex. I'd just cleaned, not knowing I was preparing the stage. Kyle sat on the edge of the living room chair, his old spot, once worn from years of cartoons and snacks, now reupholstered and unrecognizable. Amanda stood near the doorway, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. "I didn't come to argue," he said, "or beg. I just needed you to hear me." I sat on the sofa, hands folded in my lap. "Then speak." He ran a hand through his hair. It was longer than usual, a little grayer. The first time he'd looked older than me. "I know I messed up," he said. "I didn't realize how far things had gone until it was too late." "Too late for what?" I asked. He looked at Amanda, then back at me. "For me to fix it, to matter again." The word again scraped against the quiet like sandpaper. Kyle cleared his throat. "Mindy's gone." The air shifted. "Gone where?" Amanda asked. "Gone," he said. "She left 3 weeks ago, said I was a financial wreck, said I embarrassed her." I didn't flinch, didn't comfort. She took the car, moved back to her sister's, filed for separation, blamed everything, our debt, the LLC, the failed refinance, on me. Silence draped the room like a curtain. "Did you blame her back?" I asked. He looked up. "Number?" "Because she was right." Amanda raised an eyebrow but didn't speak. Kyle turned to me again. "Mom, I know I don't deserve anything, but I don't want to be written out of your story, not like this." I stared at him, heart steady. "Then you shouldn't have edited me out of yours." He blinked. It landed. His voice cracked. "I didn't mean for it to end like this. I thought time would fix it." "Time doesn't fix," I said. "It just reveals." He exhaled, long and shaky. "I lost everything. I've been couch hopping. I'm working part-time under the table just to cover groceries. I'm not asking for money, just—" He trailed off. "Just what?" I pressed. He looked around the living room like he was looking for something that wasn't there, and then I watched it happen. His eyes found the mantel, the same spot where the clock he gave me used to sit, the one he wrapped with a plastic smile and a label that read, "Time is precious." It was gone. He blinked, confused. "Where's the clock?" I didn't answer. Amanda did. "You don't get to measure this house in minutes anymore." He sat back, quiet now. He knew. The visit had never been about closure. It was an audition. One final performance to get back into the narrative he'd assumed he'd always star in, but the role was already cast. Amanda walked him out. I stayed behind, staring at the empty space above the mantel, where time used to tick. Kyle returned 2 days later. No appointment, no fanfare. Just a knock, one, then 2 more, sharp and unsure, like he still wasn't convinced he should be here. I opened the door slowly, half expecting Amanda behind him again. She wasn't. He held nothing this time. No flowers, no wine, no bouquet with a clearance sticker he forgot to remove. Just his hands in his coat pockets and dark circles under his eyes that looked like they'd been earned. "I left some things unsaid," he murmured. "I think you know that?" "I do." He looked at the threshold like it burned. "Can I come in?" I hesitated longer this time, but then I stepped back. Shoes off at the door. He managed a small nod, slipped out of his sneakers, and stepped into the kitchen like someone revisiting the scene of a fire. I had already reheated the chicken soup I made that morning. I didn't know why. Maybe I'd felt it. Maybe I just wanted the house to smell like comfort, even if it wasn't mutual. He sat at the table. The same table where I used to cut crusts off his sandwiches and correct his math homework. He didn't speak, so I did. "You asked about the clock last time." He looked up slowly. "It's in a box in the back closet. I took the battery out the same day you made that joke about visiting me if there's time." He flinched. The memory had weight now. "I didn't throw it away," I added, "but I wasn't going to let it tick on my mantle either, not after it became a symbol for absence dressed as affection." He looked down at his hands. "I thought it was clever. Thought it'd show I knew time mattered to you." I tilted my head. "Then why didn't you use any of it on me?" He had no answer, just silence and the slow collapse of pride. "You think what I gave you, money, time, second chances, was an inheritance," I said. "But it was an investment, and investments aren't owed. They're earned, and they stop when the return is disrespect." He blinked hard. "I didn't know you felt it that deeply." I offered a sad smile. "That's the problem. You didn't ask." The soup steamed between us, untouched. And then, quietly, his voice almost cracking, he asked, "Do you hate me?" "No," I said simply. "But I don't owe you more of me. That's different." He nodded slowly, eyes glassy. "I didn't come here for money." "I know," I said. "That part's over." The tension softened, barely, but enough. I slid the bowl toward him. "Eat. You look thinner than you should." We ate in near silence. The soup was warm. The air wasn't. When we finished, he stood, unsure of whether to hug me or just disappear. I walked to the front door ahead of him, picking up a manila envelope from the sideboard. It had been ready for weeks. "What's this?" he asked. "Something to close the loop," I said. "No surprises later." He took it without opening it. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said at the door. "I'm not offering it," I replied, "but I am giving you the truth. That's more than most get." He turned and walked to his car, this time without looking back. I watched him drive away until the taillights vanished around the curve. Then I went inside and sat down, letting the quiet settle. Only when I was alone again did I whisper aloud, "Goodbye." In the envelope, pressed between two notarized documents, was a single receipt. Transfer date, June 1st, 2023. Amount, $800. Memo, final. The pen slid across the page like a final breath. I signed the last line in my estate binder. Name, date, intent. Neat, clean, weightless somehow. I closed the folder and set it in the drawer beside Amanda's notarized copy. It clicked shut with the quiet kind of finality you only notice when the noise of conflict has faded. Outside, dusk filtered through the blinds, casting long golden lines across the floor. I walked through each room slowly, not in mourning, but in release. The kitchen, where I had overfed a child who grew into someone who only took. The hall closet, where the clock sat in a box that no longer ticked. The guest room, freshly dusted and waiting, not for him, but maybe someday for someone new. I wasn't alone. I was unburdened. And that's a very different thing. At noon, I walked to the mailbox. The metal was warm from the sun, and inside was a slim envelope from the Jefferson County Library. "Your grant disbursement for the McBride Educational Resilience Scholarship is enclosed." I tore it open on the porch. A modest check, but it meant the program had begun. Below it, a handwritten note. "Our first 3 applicants were young women returning to school after caring for parents. Your story inspired the essay prompt. Thank you for helping them begin again." I read it twice, then a third time. Back inside, I tucked the note into my desk drawer, right behind my sealed letter to Amanda. Legacy wasn't measured by who begged to stay in your will. It was built by who carried your name forward with care. That afternoon, the mail brought one more surprise. A postcard, no return address, just a skyline in muted tones, maybe Pittsburgh, maybe Charlotte. On the back, 4 lines in Kyle's blocky handwriting. I'm working now. Real work, union job, getting sober too. I know it's late, but I hope that means something. There was no apology, but there was no ask either. And somehow that felt more real than either. I stared at it for a moment, then walked it over to the drawer where I kept recipes, photographs, and a few birthday cards from Amanda. I slipped it in. Not the trash. Not the fridge. A space between rejection and redemption. Amanda arrived just after sunset, holding a bakery box and smiling like she was 10 years old again. "Chocolate chess pie," she said, "your favorite, and some news." We sat at the dining table, the one Kyle used to call too formal, and ate in soft clinks of forks and plates. "The library called," she said between bites. "Your scholarship fund? They've secured matching grants from the Virginia Women's Foundation and an anonymous donor. Your $10,000 just became $40,000? I sat back in my chair, overwhelmed but still. Amanda reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "You didn't just edit your legacy, Eleanor, you rewrote it." I looked past her, to the mantel, still empty, still right. I thought of everything that used to fill my time. Calls never returned, holidays rescheduled, money rerouted in silence. Now there was room. Room F, and finally, peace, or dinner that was eaten. Time that wasn't stolen. Paperwork that held dignity, not denial. I didn't need the clock anymore. I had the quiet, and the control.